What's going on, folks? Ted and Adora here. Oh, thank you, Carly. We're back to talk about personalizing spells in Dungeons and Dragons. I feel like a lot of the time, personalized spells are specifically things that people reserve for wizards, and I feel like that's because of the history of wizard-named spells in 5th edition, or in any edition of Dungeons and Dragons, really. Things like Bigby's Hand, Melf's Acid Arrow, Tasha's Hideous Laughter, things of that nature. And the reason why is someone like, let's say, Tasha, probably just had a spell called Hideous Laughter that she created, that she used constantly, and because it became so popular and something that she became sort of a signature thing for her to use, then it became eventually Tasha's Hideous Laughter when that spell was translated and allowed for other wizards to copy and add it to their spellbook, and they kept her moniker on it as it was a way to sort of honor her for having created it. Same again with some of those other spells we mentioned, Bigby's Hand and so on. But the purpose of today's video is I wanted to talk about, do you allow your players to customize spells, create personalized spells in your campaign? Do you not, and why? Do you only allow it for wizards because there's a history there, or do you allow it for others as well? So I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I don't have a lot of experience with it, so I'm hoping that between our conversations we have in this video, you'll be able to let me know what parameters you use to allow this and what degrees of customizability you allow, and then also have folks sound off in the comments with some of their best or favorite personalized spells. But speaking of new forms of magic, an interesting form of magic, I wanted to talk to you today about the sponsor, returning sponsor, Milando's Guide to Magical Marvels. We had them on earlier, and you can see now with 4 days left, they are only they have 59K rather, and they're only 900 away from their next stretch goal. This is a treasure trove of things for DMs, with 3 brand new adventures, new monsters, which have more than just a bag of hit points to make them an interesting combat and interesting fights, new magic items, puzzles, traps, hazards, and all of these based around interesting and underdeveloped 5th edition magical things, curses, runes, and things of that nature. So they do have these 3 new sort of schools of magic, if you will, which we'll scroll down and see. Then they have NPCs associated with them that the party could interact with to gain access to some of the benefits or potential detriments that associated with these unique schools of magic. Hexcrafting, which has 20 plus new curses and hexes, as well as cursed boons parties can get from an NPC like this one you see here. Rune carving, again, we're not unfamiliar with runes in 5th edition, but this is a bunch more new runes that can be enchanted and upgraded, as well as developing of magical prosthesis, which you can see here. And then spell warping, which is, I feel like, the one that is the newest concept in my mind, which is someone that basically shapes wild magic into something more usable. And there is actually a sample you can download here, which we have here as well, showing off one of the spell warping NPCs here, Kerr, the sort of crazy gnoll. And I thought I would show off here the alloy spell mark, which basically is something that you can give players access to that will give them resistances and benefits against physical damage, but in turn, it gives them sort of a weakness to spell and elemental damage, which I kind of like that high risk, high reward. And again, there's a variety of different pledge levels where you can get the PDF for basically as low as $17 US. So thank you to Milando's Guide to Magical Marvels for sponsoring this video. There's a link in the top of the video description as well as the pinned comment. So let's go back to talking about customized spells. So again, here we can see Tasha's Hideous Laughter. It is something that a lot of you, I'm sure, are familiar with at this point. And I will say that there were some newer ones added in the form of Acquisitions Incorporated. They did add 2 spells specifically tied around Jim Dark Magic. We have Jim's Glowing Coin and Jim's Magic Missile. They also are interesting in that they have a royalty component, which is very Acquisitions Incorporated, but to the point where, you are using Jim's spells and you are using Jim's name, so the sort of component of it is you need to basically spend money. My personal favorite being Jim's Magic Missile, which is, I feel like this one particularly probably has a history from some of the older Magic Acquisitions Incorporated games where Jim tried to attack with Magic Missile and you can't because Magic Missile automatically hits. But that's what it says. Sure, old Magic Missile's boring and hits its target. Do away with the drudgery of your grandfather's magic with this improved version used by Jim Dark Magic. And basically, you make an attack roll with each missile, and instead of dealing a d4, it does 2d4. But if you crit, the target of that missile takes 5d4 damage instead of rolling damage twice for critical. So basically, double damage plus a d4. But if you roll a 1, all missiles blow up in your face, dealing a force damage per missile. And then again, it adds additional missiles, an additional royalty component. But I thought this was a cool concept because this is the first time I feel like we've seen generically new, named spells. Now, we have seen things like Tasha's. There's another Tasha spell they added with Tasha's Caustic Brew, I think it was what it was, that they added here. Tasha's Mind Whip. Oh, maybe it was just called Caustic Brew. Or maybe this is just enchantment spells. But either way, they added some new Tasha spells in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. But the gyms one I thought were interesting. And again, like I said, what I wanted to discuss with all of you is, do you allow this in your games? Now, I have never explicitly told my players they couldn't do this. I'd actually very much prefer it if they did. I think it'd be very interesting to see what kind of concepts they could come up with. Obviously, they would typically be something, I would say, specific to the given character. Maybe adjust something that the character is often lamenting that there was something in the world that could do something like that, but it's not available. There's no spell that does it, so the player says, well, I'll make my own spell that does that. Or again, just sort of like a signature move or signature thing that player does, which could obviously be just a slight tweaking to an existing spell. For example, Jim's Magic Missile versus Standard Magic Missile. Perhaps your player constantly casts Toll the Dead, but they have a problem with the DM always making the saving throw. So their version of Toll the Dead is just an attack roll as opposed to a saving throw, right? And that could be, Ted's Toll the Dead, which honestly, in one of my campaigns, I have been trying to cast Toll the Dead a lot, and my DM has saved almost, I'd say 95% of the time. Toll the Dead, he's made the saving throw. So maybe Ted's Toll the Dead would be Toll the Dead exactly the same mechanically, except it's an attack roll, spell attack roll, as opposed to a saving throw. That could be an example for you. But I am curious, if you allow these in your games as a DM, do you limit it only to wizards? Do you allow others? Is it only full casters? Can something like an arcane trickster or a paladin or a ranger create their own spell? If so, do you have a set parameter that you allow? Like, how do you balance this? And I've said this before, and I'll iterate it again here. I have no problem homebrewing stuff and making stuff up in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. I think 5th edition is one of the easiest editions to generate new homebrew content in. But for whatever reason, spells are something that I have a really hard time doing. I can do magic items, no problem. I can even develop monsters, classes, subclasses. I have no problem doing that. But for some reason, when I develop a spell, I always second guess that the power level is too high or not high enough. And it just is something that eludes me, which is probably what's turned me away from doing things like making custom spells for any of my characters. But do you have some sort of tried and true method that you use for, putting parameters around these? I mean, we obviously know Fireball is an exceptionally powerful 3rd level spell. Is that sort of your go-to, right? If it's less powerful than Fireball, is that good? Is that what you use as your frame of reference? I'm curious. Or players, have you come up with these ideas for personalized spells, and was your DM all on board 100% to allow you to do it? Or did they shut it down and say they're not going to allow it? Did they tell you that things were too powerful? Or if you did come up with a spell that your DM was like, absolutely, I love it, I'd love to hear what it is. And you don't necessarily need to spell out in a great degree what it actually is. You can just give me a high-level synopsis, but I'm very curious. And then, if people are very interested, maybe you guys can sound off more in the comments and actually spell it out, or head over to the Nerd Immersion Discord and type it out there, one of the Homebrew D&D sort of channels or something along that line. Something else I thought I would show you, because I was like, maybe it's not everybody, but I went ahead and looked at the Homebrew section of spells on D&D Beyond, and look at this. So many of these are homebrew spells that people have created for seemingly, again, I can't guarantee that they're for wizards or not, but look at this. Aqua's Ring of Transposition, Aqua's Whirlpool Shield. Let's skip to the second page, right? There's a whole bunch here just on the first A page. Auro's Infernal Mutation, that's a 9th level spell, right? Okay, there's somebody made a lot of versions of this Ard spell. I don't know what that's about, but Arian's Thunder Charge, Arian's Storm Stride, Arian's Storm Says. This is obviously some sort of Arian must be some sort of lightning-based caster. Arian's Shocking Brew, Arian's Sirocco. Look at all this, right? Arok's No Fly Zone. This is a cantrip. It's a 1-foot field that repels any extra tiny falling, flying, or jumping creatures. There must be a history here, right? It says fleas, ticks, etc., knocking them back out of the field. In addition, any melee attacks made by tiny flying creatures are made at disadvantage. This spell's duration is 8 hours at 5th level, and it just increases. This must be somebody that, like, the character must have a history that they hate, like, bugs or insects, so they made a cantrip, Arok's No Fly Zone, right? So I really like that. It's just a silly Arok's Hell of 10,000 paper cuts. Like, these are really fun, and I really like the concept of this, and I'm sure these are, like, fun things that, like, every time this player pulls out one of their custom spells in the campaign, like, I'm sure the other players are like, oh, here we go, this is going to be fun. But, you know, I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And like I said, do you allow non-wizards to do this? I would love to do this. Like, again, like I said, I have this mental block around it. Like, I have a bard who I would love to, I'm sure, create his own spells. But, like, in his history in our evil campaign, he worked with, like, poisons and was, like, an alchemist and made poisons. So I came up with custom poisons that he created that he would, you know, that were designed that he made for him, you know, himself and to sell to other, you know, shady folks. And I had no problem coming up with those custom poisons that do a variety of different things. Some damage, some sort of almost like an anti-truth serum, like makes people more susceptible to lying, things of that nature. And I had no problem doing that, but, like, the concept of creating my own spell just seemed silly to me. I don't know. Or not, I guess not silly, just, like, out of the realm of possibility. And I have come up with sort of homebrew spells in the past. Some of you may know my Rod of 7 Parts campaign. My character is basically a Jedi, so I took the spells and the force powers from Star Wars 5e and basically adapted them as spells. As you can see here, breath control, choke, and so on. But I am very curious, so please let me know again in the comments. But I thought I'd create one silly one. Nerd Immersion's successful subscription. You attempt to charm a creature who observes one of your videos. They must make a wisdom saving throw, and they do so advantage if any of my companions are fighting you. But considering I highly doubt that. If it fails, the saving throw is charmed by you and must click the subscribe button on your associated channel. The charmed creature regards you as a friendly acquaintance, which more than gives you the opportunity to come up to me at a convention, say hi, and have a conversation. If you cast this above 5th level, it also has no range, right? Because you have to be able to watch one of the videos. So if you're able to see the video, that's the range. And it lasts until dispelled, or realistically until you click unsubscribe. And Adore is asleep in my lap. I promise you, you saw her at the start of the video. But I meant to put this as an optional material component. A cute puppy named Adora, but either way. So there you go, folks. This is me formally casting Nerd Immersion's successful subscription on you. So if you failed your wisdom saving throw, consider you need to go click the subscribe button right now and drive this number up from 93.1k, hopefully up to 100, so we can have a big epic party at Gen Con. So thank you all so much for watching. Please let me know. I want to hear your custom spells. And what's the thought process? What led you to develop those spells? Was it something like I had said with Ted's Toll the Dead, where you just got so frustrated at the mechanics of the existing spell that you had to tweak it and make them your own? Or did you just come up with something you're like, yeah, I really wish there was something that did X, Y, or Z, so I'll just make it happen? And once again, a thank you to Milando's Guide to Magical Marvels for sponsoring this video. I will see you all next time.